into orbit, Sputnik. The next year, they sent the next 59. They sent the first man, Yuri Gagarin, into space ahead of the Americans. So the Americans had to play catch up really fast. So President Eisenhower created the National Aeronautics Space Administration, NASA, in 1958, and NASA worked tirelessly to catch up with the Soviets. And in 1961, they sent the first American, Alan Shepard, into the moon. A year later, to a space, and then a year later, they sent the first man to orbit the Earth, which hadn't happened before. The Soviets hadn't done this. This was John Glenn. And then to prove that they could really hammer the Soviets, they sent the first team to the moon with Apollo 11 in 1969. They had problems. Apollo 13, Apollo 7. There were difficulties with some of the moon landing operations. And eventually they became much more interested in excavating and exploring deeper space and other planets like Mars. So that gave way to Viking and some of the other projects that NASA would undergo. And now it seems like SpaceX is kind of taking the reins away from the American government with that. Werner von Braun went from the tiny Mercury Redstone rock to the giant Saturn V in just 8 years. Insane. Can't wait to go back to the moon with Artemis and SpaceX. Yeah. Well, what's really cool about it all, Gaiahan, is that Werner von Braun had developed the V2 rocket for the Nazis, or had developed rockets for the Nazis, and then gave us the V2 rocket, and also worked on the space program. And there were many Nazis in what's called Operation Paperclip that were brought to the United States beginning in the Cold War, and who worked with immunity with the United States government to produce the space program and other military technology for the US against the Soviets, and never had to pay up for the crimes they did against humanity during the Soviet Union, during the Holocaust and World War III. So, yep, that sounds right for Bart Simpson. LOL. Who doesn't like Bart Simpson? There are so many great space jokes in The Simpsons. Let me see. Sebair, great to see you. Sorry I missed some of your shows. I felt sick several times due to getting hit from directed energy weapons. Me and my family. Question, is the deep state preventing FBI from releasing Epstein list? Yes, so that's a big news today, and I actually made a quick video yesterday and then deleted it because JK, they were supposed to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. Jeffrey Epstein was a New York financier who apparently worked in exploiting children and things like that, and had an island where celebrities and high-ranking people in the culture and politics and government would go and visit and perhaps partake in these exploits, and he ran it along with his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein died in prison in 2019 and didn't kill himself, obviously. And so Ghislaine Maxwell is now facing criminal prosecution, and there's been this question of files gathered by the DOJ in their investigation surrounding Epstein and what's actually happening. And a lot of people want these files to be made public knowledge, and the Trump administration promises that it will do this. However, supposedly, resistance from the FBI headquarters in New York is keeping Kash Patel, the new head of the FBI, from giving it to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, who will then release it to the public. Obviously, the victims will be, their names will be redacted and held back, but the question is, who were some of the perpetrators who participated in these activities with Epstein, paid Epstein for these services, and went to his island. So there's a lot of questions about who these people are and what they did and how deep this actually goes. And a lot of people feel that it will expose a conspiracy within the government to exploit a hedonistic plot within the government to expose those who are manipulating and abusing people, particularly children. So there's a lot of really scary things about that. But Saber, I'm really sorry about the energy weapons. I hope you and your family are okay and safe. And there's been a lot of people coming onto this channel talking about energy weapons and their interesting proliferation. So those are like the newest, most effective and deadliest form of killing. Like UK after Brexit seems to be weaker than before and definitely not more independent. Yeah, Nighthawk, it's interesting. The big issue with Britain right now is, yes, it's out of the EU, but it still has the effects of the EU from before it got out of the EU. And so they are now they deal with less economic opportunities because they're not part of the European Union. They've kind of pulled out of the common market too. And the pound is the dollar again there. And they also have an influx of immigrants, and there's a lot of tension between native Brits and these immigrant populations, many of them from the Middle East, who have settled in refugee sectors that are completely segregated from the rest of British society. So there's a lot of questions about Britain's future, and it doesn't look very positive for a lot of people. D. Reyes, have you ever had a boyfriend? No. I can clearly say never had a boyfriend. Next question. Thomas, what's up? Well, the ceiling for one, but also not too much. and Simon is not